Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Leaders Monthly Meeting. It's our last monthly meeting. Woo! Before graduation next month. So you all have gone through a long journey with us. You've tolerated Miss Cece and me, and you've made it. So we're really, really excited about this opportunity. I'm Sherry Lynn Wynn, and I'm the program director of the City Leaders Program. Miss Cece is the program coordinator of the City Leaders Program. Give her a hand. And I'd like to acknowledge other staff in the room, and that's Miss Frankie and Miss Michelle, and also to the parents who take time to get these young people to these meetings every month, and who took an opportunity to be with us and stay today for this great presentation. We thought the topic was so important that we should share it with other persons beyond this room today. This message is powerful. Our speaker is just an amazing testimony to how life can be when you put your trust in God, first of all. I'm a spiritual person. But then if you know that you can endure any circumstances. I want to tell you a little bit about the City Leaders Program, just to kind of reiterate to our viewing audience. The history of the City Leaders Program comes from our former mayor, Michael Coleman, who saw a need to develop a leadership opportunity for middle school age youth. That's grades 6 through 8. We started this back in 2012, and I'm very happy to say that this class of city leaders is our 5th class of city leaders since inception. So we're really, really excited that we're touching lives like that. We've impacted over 100 young people since the inception of this program. And it's so beautiful to see them go on and do amazing things. In fact, we have some of our alumni with us today, so we're very excited to have them connect with us and do some peer-to-peer mentorship. We have a certain criteria that you must meet to be a city leader. To be a city leader, you must be a middle school grade student, grade 6th, 7th, or 8th. You must maintain a 3.0 grade point average, and many of our students have 4.2s, 4.3s, so they are overachievers. You must be a City of Columbus resident. You must write an essay on 2 of the pillars of character. And this year, as we're about to enter our new application process, we are going to add an additional component where we are going to have a one-on-one interview with these young people. And the intent is to help teach them and train them to become the leaders of the future. People like myself and Cece and some of the other leaders within the city, we're not spring chickens anymore. So it's always good to have a sustainability plan and to have young people learning what we know so that we can train you to be the next wave of leadership. Our curriculum this year was Youth Issues, Youth Voices, and we took time on that curriculum to make sure our young people learned how to develop dialogue groups. They could sit down with their peers in the lunchroom, in their worship centers, even in their home with their siblings, and extend an opportunity for a conversation. And I think at one of our meetings we said it starts with hello. Our curriculum is a total of 61 hours, and that is 9 months of programming on a Saturday, every 3rd Saturday for 3 hours, 12 to 3. And then we have what we call our Leadership Boot Camp, which is in August, and it's 5 days of on a bus, on and off a bus, to many different places. But city leaders, didn't you learn a lot on your experiences? All right, so we're glad that it's working. Our topic today is a very serious topic. I don't know if you've watched the news, listened to all the stories around the world, but bullying is a huge topic. And guess what? It doesn't even go away when you become an adult. Sometimes there's instances where you, as an adult, are bullied by another adult. So it's really serious. It has caused suicide with our young people. It has caused young people to have mental breakdowns. It's really, really a serious situation. I want to tell you just briefly, I'll take about 40 seconds if I can get through it that quick. I was bullied when I was a young person, and I was bullied very badly. I had really bad experiences. I was an only child. I had no big brothers, big sisters to fight my battles or to teach me. I was raised in a Christian home where you were taught to turn the other cheek and not fight back. That's the old school way that I came from. Unfortunately, well, fortunate for me, I was a straight A student. I always seemed to be the teacher's pet. So I always seemed to be hated by all of the persons that were around me. And those that acted like they liked me really were my worst enemies. I had situations where I was beat up after school. The word would be going around the school all day. Sherry Lynn's going to get beat up at the end of the school day. I'd get off the bus and I would have my experiences. I was taken down to a creek behind the recreation center where I live. My hair was cut. I was beat up. I was left in a pile of mud. So I know the experience of being bullied because I felt it firsthand. So I have no tolerance, zero tolerance for bullying. But I'm going to tell you the effect that it does have, and I didn't realize it. I carried that with me for about 40 years, those experiences, those young people who did things to me that were very hurtful. I carried those with me. I didn't think it impacted me at all. I kind of tucked them away in the back somewhere. But guess what happened? About 4 or 5 years ago, I was at a college fair. My daughter was getting ready to go to college. And guess what happened? I ran into the #1 bully. I had not seen this girl in 40 years. I didn't realize it until that moment. My stomach started churning. My face started sweating. My hands started sweating. And I was feeling those emotions all over again. And that's when I realized I have zero tolerance for bullying because you tuck it away and you never know when it's going to come back to bite you. And this particular day, it did. And I went on to just be troubled by it because it brought it back up. So sometimes you have to have someone to talk to work through those experiences. And I'm not going to take up any more time because I'm not the speaker today. We have a gentleman who has come to us today with an amazing story. In fact, you look at him and you see his story. I've known Dr. Johannes Christian for several years now. I've heard him speak several different times, and his story is an amazing and impactful story about bullying, but also about forgiveness, especially about forgiveness. But I'm going to take this moment to welcome Dr. Christian to the stage. Dr. Christian.
Good afternoon. Oh, we got to do better than that. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is truly a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I want to thank Ms. Sherry Lynn Wynn for allowing me to be your speaker for this afternoon, and to all of the other leaders that are here, we thank you for this opportunity. My name, as Sherry Lynn Wynn has said, is Johannes Christian, and my story is a little bit different than Sherry Lynn's story was. How many of you all have experienced some kind of bullying? Okay. I'm going to suggest if you have that you say me or say I have. All right, thank you. I should warn you that I have some beautiful, beautiful brown eyes. But did anybody notice that I walked up here with a cane in my hand? Anybody know what that cane is for? How was that? Can you see it? Anybody know what that cane is for? To help me move around? That's partially, yes. Okay, when you see this color, what color is it? Well, what's the most color it is? Silver, and that silver is really a white. And it's called a white cane. And the white cane is used by who? Yes, by people that are blind. And that's what this cane should automatically denote, is that the person can't see. I haven't been blind all my life, but part of the reason that I'm standing here today talking to you is because of my blindness. In 2001, I had a horrible experience. I was driving my car on Interstate 70. Any of you all drive? That's some of the adults. How many of you all have had the chance to drive just a little bit? Don't tell me, okay? But when I was your age, I lived in the country, and it's not too far-fetched. Some of you may have. But in the country, we used to drive on the back roads, not on the highway, but through the fields and stuff like that. But I was driving on I-70, and I was between Dayton and Springfield. I had taken a long trip. I had gone out to Peoria, Illinois to see my daughter, who had a baby, and so we had gone out to do a baby dedication at church on Sunday morning. And after that, we had a nice big meal and spent time in her backyard with a cookout with a lot of our friends and families that were gathered together for the event. And then I was on my way back home. It's about a 6-hour drive from Peoria to Columbus. And by the time I got to Dayton, I was almost home. It was late at night, about 11 o'clock at night, and it was a hot July night. You know, July, that's the time of the year when you're out of school, right? And you've been swimming all day and doing all the kinds of things that we do on a hot summer day, right? Well, I got to a bridge that expanded the freeway. Y'all have seen those bridges, right? And on top of the bridge, there were 3 young boys. I say young, they were 16 years of age, 15 and 16. And they were sitting up there, some had bicycles, and they were up there dropping rocks off the side of the bridge. Now, city leaders, number one, you could tell me there's something wrong with that picture, right? Yeah, what's wrong with that picture? Yeah, right. It's dangerous, isn't it? That's just trouble waiting to happen. I was driving down the road, and I was, I had a Cadillac at that time. I had a young boy with me. His name was Brian Rainier. And Brian was sitting in the car with me, and, I got to tell you this. I'm a true adult, okay? When we started this trip, Brian and I got in the car to leave to go to Peoria, and we hopped in the car. He put his first thing he did was put the seat back. I said, "You going to sleep?" He said, "No, I'm just gonna chill." So he had the seat all back, and then I put the car in gear. We were getting on the expressway, which was really close to my house, and Brian just turned on the radio and just punched in the station that he wanted, and the music was loud. I didn't know my speakers could go that loud. And then he changed the bass in it, and the bass would go brrrr, and I was like, and I shut the radio off. I said, "Wait, we gotta have a game plan here." I said, "We need a game plan, because you can't monopolize this radio for the whole trip. It just ain't gonna happen." I said, "So you get 30 minutes to pick a station. We'll listen to your music, and then after that, I get 30 minutes. Fair enough?" He said, "Well, it don't sound fair to me." But I said, "Well, it's fair for me." And we got to control the volume because I want to be able to hear after we get done with this trip. And so he said, okay. So I set a timer on my watch so that we could know when his time was up. And he put on the radio and boom, 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 boom. And I just tolerated it. I couldn't understand what the man was saying. The music was loud. But after his 30 minutes was up, bam, I put on some easy listening music. And he said, you're going to put me to sleep. I said, I don't care. And I just had some nice symphonic music, and oh, it was so beautiful. And he was watching the clock, and as soon as my 30 minutes was up, bam, and we were boom, 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 boom. So the trip went like that all the way there. Of course, on the way back, you know what we had? The same rule. So on the way back, we were driving, and Brian was sitting there, and I don't remember, but I think it was my music that was on. And we were about to come under that bridge. Remember those kids were standing on top of the bridge? The car came down the road ahead of me, about 5 minutes ahead of me, and this young boy dropped the rock, and bam, it hit the back end of the car that was going down the road ahead of me. Car went swerving all over the road, and the two boys that were with him said, man, we got to get out of here because that man's going to call the cops, and they're going to be here, and they're going to haul us to jail. And they looked at Jacob, the boy who was throwing the rock, and said, listen, stop it because you're going to kill somebody. Listen to what he said to those two boys that were with him. They said, you're going to kill somebody. And he said, you don't understand why I'm out here. I want to kill somebody. Could you imagine that? He wants to kill. He don't know the people driving down the highway. 5 minutes later, they're trying to get him to go. He sees the headlights from my car. He picks up a 10-pound rock. You know how big that was? About the size of my head. He leans over the side of the bridge, and he times it as my car is coming 70 miles an hour down the road towards him, and he just leans over and drops the rock. Anybody listening to me? That rock is falling. I'm doing 70 miles an hour. The rock came right through the windshield of the car, and the only thing it hit was, bam, my peanut head. Knocked my seat back. Car is swerving. I'm out of it. Brian reaches out, takes the wheel of the car, pulls the car over, kicks the pedal, knocks the speed control off, and stops the car. Meanwhile, I'm just laying there, blood splattered everywhere. From the top of my head all the way to the middle of my mouth was nothing but a great big hole. Nose was gone. Eyes had gone out of my head. All the cheekbones, the head bones, everything was like sawdust. And blood was just running everywhere. He found my cell phone, Brian did, the kid in the car, and he dialed 911. He told them where we were. It's interesting. On the way out, Brian had not taken a lot of long trips, and he asked me about the little signs on the side of the road that had numbers on them. And I told him on the way that those were called mile markers, and it told you how far you were from either borders of the state. And so when he was talking with the 911 operator, she said, where are you? And Brian said, just a minute. And he looked out the window, and he saw what the mile marker said. And he said, oh, we're at mile marker so-and-so and so-and-so. And the cops knew immediately where to send the ambulance and where the police car should come to. Meanwhile, I'm laying there, and I mean, he didn't know what to do. He got out the car, and he was wringing his hands. The kids up on the bridge, they skid out. They got out of there quick. They left real quick. Could you imagine wanting to kill somebody and leaving somebody that you dropped a rock on? Man, I couldn't even imagine that. But the good news is, they took me to the hospital there in Springfield, and they stopped the bleeding somewhat. They kind of got me under control, put a trach. Anybody know what a trach is? A trach. A trach is a hole in your neck that leads directly to your air passages to your lungs. And they had to do that because I didn't have a nose, so I couldn't breathe. Didn't have a way to get air inside of me. And so they did that, and then they immediately air flighted me to Dayton to a trauma center. A trauma center is where they take the most worst cases that happen when somebody gets hurt, and they're prepared to deal with all kinds of catastrophes. And truly, my body was in that kind of shape. They really needed some people that really could do a job of keeping me alive. In fact, when my oldest son drove from Columbus to Springfield, and he saw me for the first time, they said, "No, we're going to take you in, Mr. Christian, and let you see your dad. But we got to warn you, your dad is in really, really bad shape." And my oldest son, who is about 6'2", and he's just a real big man, and he runs his own business, and he came in, and when he looked at me, he just collapsed. I was that bad to look at. Can you imagine just a big hole in your face? All the bones were broke. But I believe that there's somebody up there that looks out over us. There's somebody up there that was really looking out over me, because that night on duty in the hospital was Dr. Stephen Schmidt. Let me tell you about him. He was just a young surgeon who happened to be a plastic surgeon. What a coincidence that is. His daddy was a preacher, his grandpa was a missionary in Central America, and his mom worked for the church that they belonged to. And when he found out that I was a preacher, he counted it an honor to have the opportunity just to be able to work on me. Wow, what an honor that was, that he thought it was an honor. I'm thinking it's an honor that he's there to work on me. But he really did, and he was real meticulous about working on my face. I've seen other people who have had similar incidents or incidents not quite as bad as mine, and when they got done with them, they still had scars, and sometimes they even had, places where they just couldn't really repair the skin real good. But I'm so grateful that when Dr. Schmidt was coming in and out the room, Sherry Lynn, he kept saying, who do you want me to make you look like? He said, I'm a plastic surgeon. I can make you look like anybody. And I said, well, now you all may not know this person, but I told him, I could have said somebody like Will Smith, but I realized I wasn't tall as Will Smith. I could have said I wanted him to make me look like, is it Justin Timberland? But I figured maybe my complexion was just not quite right for that one. But I remembered the last movie I had seen, and you got to remember, I'm as old as John. I'm 66 years old, and I said, I'd like to look like Denzel Washington. I remember Denzel, he was in The Preacher's Wife. Anybody saw that movie? Okay, and The Preacher's Wife, Whitney, ooh la la la. She was my heartthrob. If I could just have gotten her to leave, what's his name? Bobby Brown. I told her Bobby didn't have nothing on me. I was a preacher and I was good looking anyway. But Whitney didn't listen. She married Bobby anyway. But I'd like to look like Denzel Washington. And he said, okay. So my kids gave him a picture of what I looked like, and he already had a picture of what Denzel looked like. And they tell me that when he finished, I am the spitting image of Denzel Washington. Can you see it? I've not had anybody tell me that he didn't get me to look like Denzel. So that's been my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, some people say, Doc, you got hit in the head, you had a hole in your head. Almost died. In fact, I told my children they didn't think I'd make it till morning. But here I am, 10 years later, 16 years later now, looking like Denzel Washington. And they're like, how can you laugh about that? You know, some people would be really, really sad for the rest of their life. But you know, I got to tell you, the process of getting better was hard. But along the way, I determined that it would be too easy for me to let somebody's activity make me mad. I'm not the one that needed to feel bad. I need to feel good because I'm still alive. The person that ought to feel bad is the person that threw the rock. Come on. Y'all got to work with me here. I shouldn't feel bad. I didn't do anything wrong. In fact, I was doing everything right. I had been a great parent. I was now a foster parent, taking care of somebody else's kid. I was making sure that I was giving back for all the things that have been given to me. And there really is no reason that I should feel bad that somebody was bullying me. I didn't do anything wrong. Jacob was up there. He's the one dropping the rock. He's the one breaking the law. He's the one that was out ready to kill somebody. Can you imagine killing somebody? You don't know their name. You don't know their story. You don't know anything about them. You don't know their children or their grandchildren. How insane was that? As I laid in that bed, I had a talk with God that night. Whatever night that was that I finally came through, because they tell me that for the first couple of days I was just out of it. Didn't know where I was, barely knew who I was. And my children, could you imagine coming into a room knowing that your dad was almost killed? I had a daughter, 2 daughters drove from Denver, not knowing whether when they got there I was going to be dead or alive. Can you imagine walking in, your dad's head as big as a watermelon, all bandaged up with tubes running everywhere? And you know, I'm so glad that, you know, I've been a preacher all my children's lives. And when they came in the room, you know the first thing that my kids did when they all got together? Imagine this. I'm laying there with tubes running everywhere, beeps going on with all the machines they got me hooked to, even a breathing machine, because remember, even though I had the trach, sometimes I was losing breath, so they had to have that iron thing to make me breathe. And the first thing they did, there were 5 children. I have 5 children, 2 boys, 3 girls. They made a circle around my bed. You want to know what the first thing they did? They started praying. They started praying. My youngest son at that time was 21. The oldest one was 9 years older than him, so he was just about 30. And the only thing they knew what to do, because remember, they were PKs all their lives. That's preachers' kids. You know, all they knew was they were drugged to church. Every time Daddy went to church, they went to church. And they knew immediately that Daddy was in trouble, and that all they knew to do was what they had been trained to do. And so they made a circle. And they tell me that my oldest son tried to sound like Daddy. And my younger son, he was down at Circleville Bible College, so he was getting the word every day, and he was trying to play basketball for that team down there. But at that moment, all he knew was his dad was in trouble. And they were bound and determined that they were going to ask God to help their dad. I tell you, I was never so glad to hear this story when I got better, that it made me feel good, because at least I know that sometimes when we're children and when we're being taught, we may think that children aren't listening. Sometimes people may think that you're not listening, but I'm here to tell you that I know you're taking in more than what people imagine. But I also will tell you that when you need it most, that which you've taken in, you will be able to give it back and put it out. I need you to hear me today, because you don't know what's coming down the road for you. You don't know what experiences you will have. But I will tell you that everything that you're learning right now, somewhere down the road, you're going to need it. But let me get back to my story, because it's a great story. There are steps of recuperating, and there are steps of what we call forgiveness. And when I laid in that bed, and as I began to regain consciousness and figure out, as people told me what was going on, because there were a couple stories. At first, they told me the bridge fell down, because they didn't know what happened. They just thought, well, gosh, you got a piece of concrete falling from the sky. It must have come from the bridge. And then they found out a couple days later that it was a young boy that had thrown the rock. And I got to tell you that those praying kids, they were mad when they found that out. They were really mad. And you would have been mad, too, if it was your mom or dad, whether you loved them or didn't love them. You would wish that on their worst enemy. And I can remember as I was getting better in the bed, and my brother, oldest brother, and my oldest son were on their way to court because Jacob was being arraigned, and he had to go to court. And so my son and my brother went, and he was leaving the room, and my oldest son, he was so mad. And he said to my brother, he said, if you just give me 5 minutes behind the courthouse, they won't need to have this kid go before the judge because he'd be all done. And I understood what he was saying. I was laying in the bed. Remember, I couldn't get up, couldn't talk without putting my finger over the trach. And when I heard my son say that, something snapped inside of me because that's not the way he was raised. See, he was raised like Sherry Lynn. When something happened to you, they were told, turn the other cheek and don't fight back. And I raised up and I told my son, I said, when you go in that courtroom, remember that we're Christians, and it's more than just our name. And I laid my head back down. And what I was telling him was that we can't go somewhere angry and mad and fly off the handle, but we have to show ourselves as respectable people. No matter what happens to us, as Michelle Obama says, we've got to learn how to take the higher road. This was the weekend before Easter, somewhere around Easter, when they were taking this picture of my son and my brother in the courtroom. And you'll see a picture in the Gazette, the Dayton Gazette, that's the newspaper over there, of my son extending a hand to Jacob McNairy's mother, and all of them praying together in the courtroom for both Jacob and I. I tell you, sometimes God will put us in a position where we don't know what's going to happen or who's going to see it, but it's always good that we're doing the right thing. Now, let me tell you about my recuperating, because when I laid in that bed by myself, anybody here ever wonder why things happen to you? I don't know about you, but let me talk about me. Sometimes I've had things happen, and I just didn't understand why they happened to me. And this was one of those times. I told you, I was a preacher. I was a single parent. I took care of my kids. I worked hard. I was in graduate school and working, raising them all at the same time, making sure that they got to be, on baseball teams and all the kind of sports that they wanted to play. Had them taking voice lessons and dance lessons and music lessons. And I made sure all of this was going on in their lives, and bang, 3 kids in college, and bam, while they're in college, I get hit in the head with a rock. Wouldn't you ask a question? What would be your first question? That was my question. Why? Why would something like this happen to me? I'm the good guy. I felt like I was the good guy, and I didn't understand how life could allow something bad to happen to me. But I heard somebody wrote a book that said sometimes bad things happen to good people. And I think I fell in that category. But even while I was laying there, I asked why, but while I was waiting for the answer, I got mad. I got mad that somebody would take advantage over me and think that they were better than me and drop a rock. That's a form of bullying. When you force yourself on someone else, either physically or emotionally or mentally, that's a form of bullying. And this kid was bullying me to the point where I couldn't drive the car down the road as I intended to do it. And so when I laid there, I got mad. I got mad at God. I got mad at the young boy who threw the rock. And in fact, in my mind, I had some names I wanted to call him. Never did they come out of my mouth literally, but in my mind, you need to understand, I had some choice words for that young man. And if it was you, you'd probably have said the same things I was thinking. But when I laid there, I realized that it was against everything that I taught and believed. Because I really believed that it was necessary for me to forgive him. Now, I'm not here to preach to you, but in my mind, I kept hearing something that said, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. I kept hearing that over and over and over in my mind, and I'm like, what, you want me to forgive him? He threw the rock and looked like he ought to be here doing something for me. But that same saying kept coming back, and it kept saying to me, you've got to forgive him. And I kept saying, but I don't know how. He said, the same way I forgive you, you need to forgive him. See, it's not about the act of bullying that concerns me, but it's about what happens after you've been bullied. And so when I sat there in that bed, I had to realize that I hadn't been good all my life, that there have been things that I'd done that others had to forgive me for. There were times that I told a lie, times that I stretched the truth, times that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, wasn't where I said I was going to be, and every time I got caught, somebody had to forgive me. Now, let me tell you, I found out that when you forgive somebody else, it's not for them, it's for you. Now, when I laid there in that bed, every day, they did 40 surgeries on me. 40, not 4, 40, 10 times 4. They were wheeling me back and forth between my room and the operating room like I was on an express highway. Good thing the wheels didn't burn out on the bed. But after I forgave this young boy, when they would take me in, the doctor said, well, in about 4 days, we'll go in and do so-and-so, but it's going to take that long for you to recuperate. 2 days later, I'm recuperated. He comes in, he says, man, you look like you're healing really well. We're going to move that surgery up. We're going to take you in this afternoon. I began to heal faster. I began to feel better. I began to be more alert. I believe that when we let go of animosity and anxiety, that our bodies begin to do what it does naturally much better. Oh, I hope I'm making sense to you. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying, because it's not about the person that hurt you at this point. It's about what you need to do for yourself. And I'm just about done. But I had to make up my mind that I had to let go of all the hurt that I was feeling for Jacob. Because I realized the other side of that is, if I didn't forgive him, then I'm going to start to internalize what was going on inside of me. And so the anxiety is going to cause high blood pressure. The high blood pressure is going to cause my arteries and to be weakened, and my heart's going to pump through the weakened arteries, and I'm going to blow an artery and have a heart attack. I'm going to end up with an ulcer and be doubled over because I got a hole in my stomach. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown because I'm so anxiety-filled about what happened to me that my nerves can't take it, or somehow I'm going to malfunction in my body because of all that I'm internalizing. Well, let me help you. It ain't worth that for me. I'm the guy who was in the right. Why do I want to hurt myself more? And so I let go. And I remember when my kids walked in the room, And I had made peace with God, and I told my daughter, she walked in the room, I said, I got to write a letter. And she said, okay, who do you need to write it to? I said, to the kid that threw the rock. And she said, really? She said, what do you want to say to the kid that threw the rock? I said, I got to tell him that I forgive him. And my daughter said, Daddy, lay down. You've been hit in the head with a rock, and you're not thinking right. I said, yes, I am. I'm thinking right, and I need you all to come in the room so I can tell everybody I'm going to forgive Jacob. And my daughter said, let me call the nurse. They're going to give you something and let you go to sleep for a while. She thought I had gone cuckoo. And then, you know what I did? I quoted those words that I kept hearing in my brain, and I said, you know, the word says that I have to forgive him if I want God to forgive me. She said, yeah, Daddy, but you the one got hit in the head with the rock. I said, I know, Ness, I've been hit in the head with the rock, but I still got to forgive the kid. And I realized that if I didn't forgive him, my children wouldn't forgive him. And those same things that would go wrong with me would go wrong with them. And they would be off track and wouldn't be able to be the kids that they ought to be because of what somebody else did to their dad. Did y'all get that? See, sometimes it's not about you, it's sometimes about those that are watching you. And when you think nobody knows what you're doing, you need to think again, because folk are watching you to see how you will react to whatever the situation is. Folk didn't understand. I didn't forgive Jacob to be on television. I forgave Jacob so that I could help myself. I forgave Jacob so I could help my children and my children's children. You know, when we get together as a family, you know, we always have prayer time, and we get in a big circle as a family, and we're praying. But sometimes it's just my younger grandchildren. Somebody will say, God bless Jacob, wherever he may be. You know, I want them to bless him. I want them to think about him in a positive manner, that he might be all that God would want him to be. Why? Because if God does that for him, what do you think I think he's going to do for me? And I don't know about anybody else, but that's really what my life is about. I figured out that as a victim of being bullied, that I could not allow a rock to determine what my future was going to be. I just couldn't allow that to be the end of the story. I couldn't allow it to just say, preacher hit with a rock. And that's where it ended. But I figured my life was worth much more than that. And that's the reason that I'm here this afternoon. And that's the reason why I've spent a month in Guatemala, in Belize, where I visited every school in the country. I went to tell them about forgiveness. I went to tell them about anti-bullying, because I believe that when life gives you a bitter lemon, that you've got to figure out that there's something else that you could do with it. And so I squashed that lemon and I made lemonade. And as a result, I've been able to go to 8 different countries telling people about how you can overcome adversities in your life. That's the reason I could walk from here to Cleveland for the face of forgiveness, so that other folk would know that when you've been bullied, when you've been picked on, when you've been put down, when you've been cyber sniped on the internet, when somebody has done something dastardly to you, that you can rise up above it and still maintain that you're somebody and you've got a story to tell. Oh, I hope I'm making sense. I'm just done, Sherry Lynn, but I want folk to really understand that no matter what happens to you in life, you've got the final say-so of what the final chapter is going to look like. And you don't have to allow somebody else to determine who or what your life story is going to be. You can always pull yourself up, shake yourself off, and determine what your destiny will be. Thank you. Is your question? Thank you. I don't know if anybody has a question, but I'm sure I probably left a couple things out, and you may have a question. So, would you like to have a time to ask a question? Yeah? All right, good. I'm going to come close to the end. I'm not going to jump, I promise. This is Lieutenant David Sawyer. He's with the fire department.
Good?
I'm great. I'm not going to jump, I promise.
till you come. You do
Okay. I told my daughter earlier I was going to do one of those preacher things and jump off the, but I was told I couldn't do that. Okay. All right. Who's got a question? Good question. Good question. You know, far be it from me, but when I got hit with the rock, it became a big news story. I don't know why, but it really did. I guess because of the magnitude of the incident, but it was all over the radio. And Jacob's parents, after they were doing a house-to-house search in the area where the bridge was, the police were, and his parents brought him into the police station and turned him in. Well, yeah, because it was already, the kids had gone home to tell their parents what this other kid did because they did not want, they wanted it clear that they didn't throw the rock, the two kids that were with him. And so people were finding out, so, there was no sense in hiding it. He couldn't hide. So they brought him in, and he confessed, said he did it, and that ended the search, but there was, still a lot more to go. But that's how they found it. Any other questions? Yeah, yes, he did. Yes, he did. He confessed. Well, we kept going back and forth to court, and they kept, you know how they do. They canceled the court hearing. But anyway, after about 5 times of going, he finally confessed, and so he pleaded guilty. We didn't have to go to a trial, and they gave him 13 years, and then 2 years before he finished it, a year before he was to get out, the judge asked me if I would give him judicial release, which means the judge would let him out. And so I talked to my kids, and we agreed that he could be let out. And so they let him out a year early, but he served the 12 years in adult prison at 15 years of age. So by the time he got out, he was pretty much an adult, almost 30, and lost half his life. I do. I have a friend who was a chaplain in the prison who happened to work with Jacob and has a relationship with him. And I hear from him through the chaplain. He came out, he was in a halfway house, so for a while he couldn't contact me personally, because that was part of his release. But whenever I'm doing an event, he will send me a message through my chaplain friend. And so we're in touch that way. I'm waiting for the day that he'll be sitting next to me on the stage. That's my prayer, is because I think that there's a power in that. He's not ready, but he promised he'll let me know when he is. But I just think to hear his side of the story is going to be more powerful than my side of the story. Because he changed his life as a result of this too. And he went on, finished his high school diploma in prison, and he took up horticulture, and he's working somewhere in the Dayton area for a nursery, as far as I know. And so I'm really proud of that. Also, 4 years into his sentence, I got a chance to go to the prison and meet with him. Can you imagine that, meeting the person who tried to kill you? It was intense. It really was, but it was a good thing to happen because he got to know me personally, and I got to know him. Somebody else with a question.
Do you look at the world, because you said you could see before and after blind, so do you
I tell people, if you have this conversation often, that's a great question. I tell my family, you look good because you've never aged. I remember you just like you were in 2001. And so my sister, who's 5 years older than me, she's now 71, and I say, you don't look a day over 50. I think I told Dave, I haven't said this in the car. He drives me a lot to different events, and I said, I don't know that I'd know the world if I could see today, because I imagine things have changed so much. And sometimes, I'm grateful for the people that drive me, because they'll say, oh, they put up a new CVS here. It's ultra modern. It's got big lights in it, does so and so. Or somebody will say, whatever it is, they'll describe it to me, and that makes me feel good. Does that answer that for you? Yes, it does. Okay. Thank you for your question. What of our city? A city leader. Sydney was sitting behind me, right? Yes, Sydney. Sydney, I have to be real honest. I don't remember the rock dropping down. I can tell you that when I think about it, that it causes me a lot of distress. If I try, when I was healing, I tried to close my eyes and imagine it, and that was real scary. So the only emotions that I really felt would have been my reaction maybe 3-4 days after, when I really had started coming around and people were telling me what happened. And then I was more confused at the beginning than I was angry. And I think I was confused because it was hard for me to even fathom that somebody would be so evil to drop a rock. Does that make sense? Okay. Somebody else. Yep.
Oh, hands popping up.
Yep. All right. I want hands. Okay.
Speak loud.
I went in, this happened on on July the 9th. I came home to my home on September the 10th. September the 10th, 2001. Anybody remember what happened on September the 11th? Can you imagine the day I came home? The day after I came home, I was sitting in my chair, had the TV on, watching the Today Show on 9/11. I was ready to go back to the hospital. I was like, that's a great question. My mind went right there when I was coming up. So I asked him. He was real angry with life. He had a lot of emotional problems. I'm not going to say he was crazy, because that's an out for me, and that's not going to work. But he had a lot of problems. He used drugs. He tried to use cannabis, and he felt like life was he just gave up on life, and he was that angry. And he just wanted to hurt somebody. Does that make sense?
Another question.
Okay. Question.
How do you think the other person in the car felt
Wow, thank you for asking. I'm still in touch with Brian Rainier. He was my foster son. In fact, I just got a call from his mom a couple days ago. They're in Kentucky. He's grown. He went through a lot of emotional stress. He could not believe what he saw and what he experienced, because obviously he knew me, and we had a real bond from the very first day that he came to my house. And he'd only been there less than 30 days when this happened, by the way. So it has been really traumatic for him. He's gone through a lot of counseling to really deal with it. And he's doing well today. Somebody else? Carmen. Cameron. I got a niece named Cameron. How are you?
Good. What is your take on life now?
Wow. Do all you can as much as you can and do good for everybody. And so people try to keep me to slow down, and I don't want to slow down. So, oh Lordy, I don't know if I can answer this one.
Doc and I talk all the time, so I always ask me to bring back. One of the things I wanted to say, and I do have a question, is during your accident, I was on duty that day.
Wow.
What feelings I had, I didn't even know you at that time. It created fear in me. It meant that when I went down that freeway, I looked at the overpass bridges for somebody to go along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure on different issues that affect bullying or shootings, things like that, when you know that's in your neighborhood or in your community, a route that you take all the time, that awareness sticks out of you when you start looking for that bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to, I love your teachings about forgiveness, you have to let that go
Yeah.
because it creates that fear in you.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when I first came out and was be taken out in a car, the slightest sound would make me jump. I just, and the bigger the sound, the worse I jumped. Whenever I would be on I-70, like going west, and we'd go under the bridge, before I could get to that bridge, I would go to sleep. And I'd wake up after we had gone under the bridge. And it didn't matter which direction we were going. Nobody had to tell me I was at the bridge. My body would know when I got to that bridge, and I would just check out. Boom. Go to sleep, and I'd wake up on the other side. I've gotten over that now. I don't quite do that like I. Uh-huh. But, yeah.
I do have for you real quick is, how can young people, or what can they do, what are your tips for them to improve their self-esteem?
Wow. You know, thank you, Dave. That's a great question. I think the first thing you have to do is you got to love yourself. You've got to love yourself, and you have to see yourself for yourself. You can't always rely on whether somebody else says you're nice or you look nice. You know, you've got to have a confidence about yourself that, you know, it's kind of like my Denzel Washington person. You know, I know, doggone it, I'm darn good looking. Come on, y'all. No. See, I don't need y'all to come with me on that because I know I am. You know, I know that I can dress. You know, because I'm going to make that happen, okay? You know, I don't need somebody to tell me I'm smart because I believe in my mind if somebody else can do it, I can do it just as good. Hello, somebody. Now, somebody can say, oh, you're just full of pride. No, no, no. I just know who I am. That makes sense? So I believe that, you know, if you're going to encourage, you have to encourage yourself. Can't wait for somebody else to encourage you. You know, that's the reason y'all are the leaders. This is the good group. Because y'all figured that out, right? You don't need somebody to tell you you got to read to get knowledge. You've already figured that out. So all you're saying is, what book can I get next? I'm right about that, right? All right. Or what lesson can I do next? Okay? So I believe that's got to come from within you. You can't wait for it to come from somebody else. You've got to make that happen for you. You've got to make that you believe in who you are, and whatever it is you want to do, you can do it. Remember, I told you, I couldn't let the rock determine for me what I was going to be. Who has to determine that? Come on now. Who determined that? And who's going to determine it for you? All right. Come on, get your hands together and clap. All right. 3 more questions. All right, 3 more. I'm ready.
Now, after the accident, what's your intake on forgiveness? Did it change after the accident?
Oh my goodness, yes. The way it changed is I believe in it so much more than I did before. I believe that forgiveness is important, that I don't hold the person responsible for what they did, because I will always hold them responsible for their actions. But in my forgiveness, I'm no longer holding an animosity or a hatred against them. See the difference? Okay, and I believe that holds for all of us. I do it because I believe it's a principle for my life. I believe that it's a principle that helps me to be a better person. That makes sense? So that's really my take, because it's a principle, because it's a Christian principle, and I consider myself to be a Christian. Of course, my name is Johannes Christian, but it's not about my name. Okay? Does that answer that for you? Oh, that's okay. Come on with it.
What advice would you want to give to someone who's getting bullied right now?
Wow. First thing I would say is tell somebody what you're going through. You don't have to go through it by yourself. You know, when I laid in the hospital bed, of course, being a preacher, I had preachers coming from everywhere. My best friend lives in New York City. He flew in. Bishop Larry Trotter, who's a well-known international preacher, lives in Chicago. He flew in, you know. And as I recuperated, I had to talk this thing through. And so I talked through my experience with other peers. Does that make sense? So first thing you got to do is tell somebody. Tell them what's happening. Tell them how you feel about what's happening. And tell them how you want to change the situation. That make sense? You know, you can try, if you get to the point where you can try to have a conversation with the individual to try to defuse the situation, you might try that as well. But if you don't feel comfortable doing it on your own, let the adults handle it. Okay? Oh, you are so observant, Eunice. Y'all give Eunice a hand clap. Yes, that is. There was a bill signed, and I forgot the number, and I have it written down, so I'm not supposed to forget it. But there's a bill that was named after me to make sure that there was protective vandaling fencing on all the bridges in the state of Ohio. And I have been working to make sure that it's not only in the state of Ohio, but that it becomes a national bill so that it's in all the bridges in the country. Okay. Yes? Who is it? Hey, what's your name? Say? Cedric. All right. Oh man, please. I don't know. I am so grateful that I got hit and not him. I was 50, he was 15. He had his whole life ahead of him. I don't think I could have taken it if it was him. So I can only tell you that I am so grateful that he did not get injured physically, and I prayed fervently that he emotionally would heal. Okay? But that's a great question. Thank you. Yes.
And you do not appear to have a handicap, as a lot of people would say. Tell us about that. Tell us how that is for you. And you're so positive. You do it for yourself. And
Well, I do it for myself, but I do it for those that I interact with as well. I think by now you understand that these are not my eyes. They're prosthesis, and they're just plastic lenses that are sitting there, okay? And so that helps me to have the sense that I'm together, I'm whole, or give the appearance of being whole. I have confidence that I can make a difference in other people's lives, and that's my desire. I know that good communication skills are that I look at people and not down at the floor. I mean, I'm sure that you know that, because I'm sure you, as leaders, you're being taught that you have to have a confidence about yourself. You know, if you look weak, feel weak, you'll be weak. But if you look confident and you talk confident, then you display what you are. That makes sense? I don't want someone to feel, oh, there goes that poor old blind man that got hit with the rock. That's just not me. Yeah, I got hit with the rock, but let me help you. Dave will tell you, there ain't nothing that I think I can't do. You know, there's a zip line in Belize. And if you go to my website, you'll see me on the zip line. And it goes way a couple miles. I ain't talking about the little short one where you hop on and hop off. I zip through the jungle, okay? I'm serious. I mean, I parasail. I parasail. And I drive my car. I have 2 friends that will take me, and David is not one of them, that are willing to take me to a parking lot and allow me to drive my car. And there's a truck lot in Obetz where they park all these great big tractor trailers. And on Sunday afternoon, they have a man in the booth. We'll drive in there, and we switch drivers so I can drive on. It's off. It's safe, it's legal, I'm not breaking the law because I'm on private property. And I drive around, and when I get done, we get out the car, and the guy in the windows always wave, and I hold up my cane and wave at him. Walk around the car and get in the other side. You want to have life. And I don't want to be, I just don't want to miss out on life. And when you figure out you've been that close to death, well, I figure what else could happen? You know, that's just the way I look at it. So does that help you, Sherry? Okay.
We have one of our leaders,
Uh-oh.
one of our coordinators that keeps our city leaders motivated because she is a 9-time heart survivor.
Stop. All right.
Miss Cece
Come
keeps us motivated. You would never know her story by looking at her.
All right. That's the way.
Keeps it moving, and she stays motivated and keeps these young people built up all the time.
And that's what you want. Miss Cece, I'm so proud of you. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the gym. I try to be there at least 3 times a week. I want everything about me to be in tip-top shape. And that's just the way I am. And as a leader, that's how you want to be. You want to present the most positive example of life so that when people look at you, they've got something to pattern their life after. That makes sense? That's what you want to do. Thank you so much for having me. Sherry, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we're really, really excited that Dr. Christian took this opportunity to be with us today, city leaders, and give you his story. And there is a book for each of you all. I believe Dr. Christian will sign that for you. And I want you all to take pride in that book because trust me, this man has a story. So when you think life is tough and you're ready to give up and throw in the towel, just take one more breath and one more step, and you'll be just fine.